Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tony Sirianni podcast. I am thrilled to have my good friend Joe Montgomery, who is a managing director of the Optimal Service Group at Wells Fargo Advisors, one of the premier advisors in the United States, and has been so for many, many years. In the Virginia Football Hall of Fame, former professional football player, just one of the all-around great people in our business. So, Joe, I'm thrilled to have you here. And you were the top producer, you don't like to talk about, in the United States for a long, long time. And I think the way you've done business has been a credit to our business. So thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be with you. I think you know the legacy of this business, and I think you do a great job of passing it on to the people coming up in the business. And
Well,
that's part of the reason to be here and talk, right? Is you want people to continue to make this business as good as it's been.
yeah. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We were just talking earlier about my dear friend, Marvin McIntyre, who actually learned a lot from me because I was his boss. No, he knew a lot more than I did. But one of the greats, and I know you know him too. And it's just there is a pass along element to this business, right? And that's what's kind of interesting. I do want to talk to you about this aspect of it because it's top of mind with this conversation. We're an apprentice business. You got to learn by doing. And, with all of this AI and Zoom and sort of the way things got broken up and the way the industry is sort of spreading out, it's not the way when we started, you were in an office, right? We were 100 people in the office and you knew how to do it. And today it's harder. How are you dealing? Because I know that it's important to you to mentor, people. So how are you, how's Optimal Service and you guys dealing with, bringing in young people, new people to the business and sort of, keeping those traditions going?
Yeah, that's a great question, first off, and it's central to this business. I think the industry has been focused on the aging population of the FA, aging population of the clientele. And I'm sitting here talking to you with a lot of gray hair, right? So the question comes up when I'm talking to people. Um, and I think what we tried to develop several decades ago, I guess really three plus, um, and going back to when we started as a group, there wasn't anybody doing teams. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
1985 is when we rolled out the Optimal Service Group. There wasn't really a playbook, so we kind of had to write it. What we determined was that it's only a business if it outlives you. And uh, I took that from an entrepreneurial coach that I used, which wasn't related to this industry or profession, but I wanted to get a kind of different way of looking at things. And if you think of it in that way, you want to build something that works, whether you're hopefully it's not dead, hopefully it's vacation or paddleboarding or whatever, doing something different. But the beauty is if you can get into and build a structure that provides real continuity of care, and that's what
Mhm.
everybody's talking about.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would submit that they're not necessarily doing it. Just putting a whole bunch of people together or putting teams together where it's Tim plays golf on Tuesday and Fred plays on Thursday, that's not a team.
Yeah.
And you know my background. I mean, basically, what you got to look at if you're an investor or a prospect, whatever, I would submit that people want to be looking at a situation where people are working off of the same playbook. Sorry for the sports analogy,
All
but
right.
the fact is, if you line up with 11 people and they're not working off of the same playbook, that's not really a team.
Yeah.
That's some conglomeration. That's something that may get
I think,
misrepresented to the public.
yeah, I think people, tend to, today don't recognize how in our lifetimes how much this business has changed. I mean, I remember sitting in an office at Merrill Lynch, and I was maybe just out of the training program, and they came out with the CMA account checks, and I remember advisors throwing their hands up. Why would we give clients checks? They'll just take money out of the account. They just didn't get it, didn't get it at all. And
Yeah.
it's funny because now we've sort of evolved and things have happened and Optimal has found itself in a really nice, position. Obviously, you've been successful straight through. But I think a lot of people today are, are worried. They worry about AI. They're worried about, the fact that the stuff that we did when we started with the cold calling and all that, that was very difficult, but it was still a way to build a book. And you've called this the golden age of investing. And I
Yep.
just want you to talk a little bit about that, how you feel like even prospecting, there's still this tremendous opportunity for advisors out there. There's not the time to be down on it.
No, I think it's fantastic. Start with AI. If you go back and think, 30 years ago, 20
Yeah.
years ago, 30 years ago, we're having discussions. I'm making presentations to FAs about computers. And instead of people being worried about computers, which they were, if you remember,
I do.
the effect has been that we've just been able to scale up on what we could actually do in a given day and what our people can do in a given day. That's actually what I think AI is going to do for us.
Hmm.
I mean, certainly in my lifetime, that's how we'll be using it, is to leverage up personnel just the way we did with computers.
Yeah.
And the opportunity set is incredible. The golden age, as I would call it, is if we're in an environment where the average investor, whatever you want to define that as for your business, they have access to more tools than they have ever had. And if you go back to something that's been true for the 50 years plus that I've been doing this, diversification is still the only free lunch in this
Yeah.
business. And diversification, at least to me, means a broader allocation of assets, of asset types. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, you've never had, I mean, if it's a free lunch, it's a giant smorgasbord, right? You've got
Right.
an incredible opportunity set. And you can, pick on private credit, you can do whatever you want to do. But if you think about what's available now, but look at it this way. If you roll back to about 1989, you had KKR buying RJR Nabisco, right?
Yep.
Barbarians at the gate.
I
Now,
remember that.
okay, so what did you and I get to do with it? Almost nothing. We got to read about it in the Wall Street Journal every day.
Yep.
There was no Bloomberg, there was none. We got to read about it, get a daily update. That's about what you got. Today, you can invest side by side with those people.
Yeah.
And I'm not making a specific recommendation. I'm just making the point that you have access to tools that you have never had. And if you really think about it, at some point in your career, you probably coveted the opportunity to have those tools. So the opportunity for those that are participating in those assets is the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Um, and we
It's
can talk about
incredible.
prospecting,
Yeah.
prospecting in a golden age because of that.
Well, I'd love to talk about the prospecting too. We had, this was the Fifth Avenue office of Merrill Lynch. So it was a premier office that I was in. We had one computer on a carousel that we would spin around to four guys to share. And we had the pneumatic tubes for the
Yeah.
yeah, that was all good. So, but prospecting was, we had a phone book and we made calls, and we had a phone book for Des Moines and a phone book for St. Louis and right out of New York, and we called. So, what do you see as sort of opportunities in prospecting today for new advisors or people coming in?
Well, there's two ways to think about it. The tools we mentioned are
Yeah,
broader. So, and they have applications all the way down from ultra high net worth, accredited, and frankly, even anywhere you want to work on the spectrum of asset uh, with clients and what they have. You could actually do today for somebody I mean, for $25,000, you can look at sophisticated accounts that would be the equivalent of what you and I were doing 30, 40 years ago. um, they have all kinds of assets that they didn't have back then. So that's part of it. The other thing is, if you think about it, most advisors don't actually participate in those asset classes. I mean, I don't pick your firm, but if you go look at it, 75% of the people at firms are not using a broad asset mix.
yeah,
So the opportunity is to go to prospects that they will see things from you that they are not seeing from other advisors. And people are pretty savvy. Uh, if you give them the right information, they'll make the right decision.
Yeah, you want they want to feel yeah, and I think that points back a little bit to the AI thing because in my opinion AI just gives you the consensus opinion, right? So it's actually going to drive alternative usage, I think, because advisors who want to stand out are going to have to do something other than what AI could do, right? So you're going to need to know all the alternatives.
Yep. And that's what makes it exciting for me because you can actually do things for people uh, and put them in a position where they're where people were 30 years ago that had to have millions and millions. Now, their choices about working with that, but that's another issue about AI. I would submit that you can service a much broader mix more rapidly. It's basically what Henry Ford did with mass
Yeah,
customization. If you
yeah,
think about it, that's where we are in this business. And, whether you're building a Henry Ford model, no, I guess Model T would be what that'd be,
yeah.
or not. But that's the way you got to think about it.
So, and basically, advisors will be able to manage more assets more efficiently. So we should see the AUM of every advisor go up. They're not going to hit Joe Montgomery level maybe, but they should be going up with AI.
It's quite incredible. I mean, if you think about it, if you think about the horrible things we've been through,
Yeah.
uh, you know, coming out of the oil embargo in '74, the crash in '87. I mean, people forget how awful that was, and a lot of people weren't around for that. But we
Yep.
didn't have tools then. It was pretty much stocks and bonds and cash. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even probably very diversified in the equity area because
No. I remember if you remember another old Merrill story. They came out with this thing, was it called the consults something, where you were supposed to give clients a review of all of their assets, and it came back in a big leather bound book with like all these
yep,
recommendations, legal estate planning, all this stuff. And so in our office, the thing was who could sell the most, consults. So I won. I sold it. The manager takes me around. I get a bottle of scotch, she's hugging me, and I had all the information in there was priceless that we had. But we ended up playing soccer with them, kicking them across. We didn't do anything with it. I just sold the consults thing, and then we left it alone. There was like all the recommendations to buy insurance, but we didn't do anything. And today, the advisors they're doing a lot for a fee. They're this the notion of all the planning and stuff that we do, we just didn't think of it then, or
yep.
wasn't important then.
So for me, it went back to the Golly and Holmes sales approach that came out of
Yeah.
Xerox talked about need-based selling. All right. And the thing that they missed in that was the Zig Ziglar point that people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want.
Hmm.
So the sales job in this business uh, is simply helping people find out what they need, but then making them understand why they want to fill that need. For me personally, that was the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, summer of '76, the Dow hit 1,000, and it didn't see that number again for about 4 years. So everything we did was it didn't work. It didn't necessarily go to hell in a handbasket, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I kind of out of necessity stumbled into the idea of financial planning, which was fairly rare at member
It was
firms
real.
that are
Yeah.
stock. So I spent the latter part of the '70s figuring out how to get to the point of motivating people to fill that need. So the
And I would
beautiful
also tell you, Joe, even in the 19 like 88, 89, people didn't know how many assets they had under management. It was
no,
irrelevant. It had
no,
no idea.
did not know. And
No.
but if you think about it, in other industries like the insurance industry, I was fortunate to do business with a guy who was the leading salesman out of Lynchburg, Virginia, for a really large national insurance company. And it was pretty fascinating because this guy had built this incredible business that was nationwide. Um, and it taught me a lesson about figuring out those needs and filling those needs. And then what you really wanted was to get to what the insurance industry had, which was the
Yeah.
fee-based approach, right? I mean, they
Yeah.
were getting paid every renewal. And that's in essence what you were talking about into the late 80s when that started to occur. And that's still, I think, where we are today. It's the greatest opportunity in the five now plus decades I've been doing this.
Well, I guess that brings up the question, right? Because you're extraordinary, and I probably attribute a lot of your success to this, but being very client oriented, right? It's all about the clients. And my experience is all the great advisors. At some point, you're making enough money, you're doing enough stuff, but you really you get up every morning to help people, right? That's what it's about. And the clients count. How have the clients changed in terms of you dealing with them over all these years?
Yeah, that's interesting too. I think they have learned that we are not in the transaction business. One of the guys that brought me into or was a consultant for me, actually, a coach, said price is only an issue in the absence of value.
Yep.
And we ought to just have that tattooed. I'm not suggesting it literally, but that ought to be top of mind because if you address that up front with people, that pretty quickly gets past the price of things.
Yeah.
And the advantage we have today, I think, is we can price very favorably for people because we can take the time to let things transpire, assets go up, the performance goes up,
Yeah.
people are satisfied. And I think the fee structure is fabulous. And if you take more of a financial planning approach, however you want to look at it, going back, I'm fascinated by the story you told about kicking the thing around at Merrill. It's kind
Yeah.
of funny, isn't it, that actually is where we wound up,
Yeah.
you know, taking that broad-based approach.
It
It's
makes me think how
pretty
stupid I
cool.
was and how, but we just followed the herd. There was no sense to it. And the firms too, they were on to the next thing. They were on to the next widget and you went along. So there's an amount of independent thinking that you have to do. You have to be strong enough to say, I know this is what I want.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the CMA, I was completely jealous of that, right? From the jump.
Yeah.
And then when we sold wheat to First Union, uh, we were the only office that asked if we could get an ATM machine. Nobody,
Yeah.
you know, people said, what? And they wouldn't give us one because they didn't know what to do, right? And
Right.
so it was kind of like, okay. But I think the fact that we have generally been early adopters, I would argue not out of any particular foresight,
Yeah.
mostly out of necessity, I think. But it pays to be aware of what's new and different and
For
not be
sure. I mean,
scared.
yeah, I mean, you've seen early adoption and early adopters win, right? They win. So you got to get on this AI thing because that's not going anywhere. You got to figure out how to use it. What's the best tactical, what's the best strategic use of this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think firms are struggling with it. Uh,
sure.
but I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. Look, I mean, anytime I always tell people I'm as lazy as they get. If I can find somebody to do the work and leverage up, I mean, we don't buy on margin, but we
Yeah.
leverage everybody we can and every tool. And so now what you have with AI is you have something that can work 24/7 for you, much like the discussion about the computer when it came on.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
runs 24/7 as long as you got electricity, we're in good business.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that I mean, surprise, we're kind of coming up on it here. But when you think of I think of the success of that William and Mary Mafia, all the guys I know in there through finance from, Jim Brinkley and Jim Mason and Bill Jones, and Marvin and you. I mean, it was a great group of people. And it feels like I think you hit it at the right time, like it came with all this tremendous growth. But I would also say that, the business in the last 5 years has maybe changed more than it has in the last 50 years. So
Yeah,
there's still this great opportunity in our business today.
yeah. I think it's unbelievable. I mean, for me, I think you mentioned the William Mary connection, and as you know, I went there because of Lou Holtz, and
Yeah.
the street came along, and how I wound
I was
up
going
in
to
this.
ask about him, so I know you lost a friend there.
Yeah,
Um,
but I got to see him literally just before he passed, and it was awesome. It was like being 18 again,
yeah,
and you get to revisit those things about what was a super important point in my life. And I wouldn't have gone to William and Mary if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have wound up in this business had somebody from William and Mary not had that interest,
yeah,
um, and because of him. And so it goes on and on, and that's part of the give back. We talk to a lot of people because we are in Williamsburg, and as it turns out, it's a great place to do business all over the country. Uh,
yeah,
Everybody wants to come visit.
yeah. That's right. It's a nice part of the world, and people don't know, but like some crazy stat, like 9 out of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country are in Virginia. I mean, it's just, and Merrill Lynch's biggest office was always D.C., right? So all these people had all these big offices in the capital region. It was always a fun place to do our business.
Yeah, and
Always had
it,
been.
but everybody's national now, so it really, again, that's one of the great opportunities. There's not regional limitations.
Yeah, and I didn't know what Zoom was going to do. I thought, clients weren't going to like to be on Zoom. They love it. It all works out fine.
Yeah, and that's actually too a leveraging effect of this business. Right? You're able to do more, see more, talk to more people. Granted, we probably get a little Zoom burnout, but that's actually good. It's another use of technology. I think
Mhm.
it's our friend. Um, and as long as we, use these things appropriately, whatever AI can do, I don't know that I'll be around when it takes over the world, but for me, we're going to leverage it up till we find out
As best
otherwise.
you can. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I look at that as a high note, so I'm going to end us there. But I would also say that Patrick, there must be an award for the best dressed guy on the show. By the way, I am wearing pants. I'm going to say this again. I'm not untucked. Like I think our business has devolved into an untucked convention. You are keeping up a standard, so I appreciate it. I'm sure there's some emolument we can give you as best dressed. Something.
I appreciate it. It's great to be with you guys.
Good to see you. Thanks a lot, Joe.
You bet.